Welcome to the second episode of Talking Shenmue, where we break down each episode of Shenmue the Animation with members of Megavisions and the Shenmue community. But before we begin, I want to welcome my co-host for our second episode. It's Marcin. Welcome back, buddy. How's it going?
I am happy to be back, and I'm excited that we decided to create a podcast specifically for the Shenmue animation, which I was super stoked about when they announced it, whenever that was, a year or two ago. And now we get to break it down. And so for the next 14 weeks, I will be eating good as a Shenmue fan. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so I want you, before we jump into the episode, I know Shenmue is really been really important to you. I think it's been one of the things that kind of brought you into Megavisions and Sega Nerds back in the day, one of those early things at least. So yeah, Shenmue's important to you. Tell the audience what it means to you and what your kind of history with the series has been.
So I think, like the reason I joined Sega Nerds, and one thing that I would be like, all right, yeah, I love Sega stuff. Like, because the first thing I would point to is Shenmue, because that was the biggest IP that I was, idolizing, for the past, Jesus, 20 years now. That's crazy to say that. But yeah, like it's been one of those franchises that stuck with me. And I met a lot of friends, and I learned, I got introduced to different people in the community, and that just kind of, made it that much better. The story gripped me, the first time I played it, I was what, 9 or 10. And the gameplay, the graphics, everything like was mind blowing to me, and that left a giant impression. So when they didn't create a sequel after the second one, the joy in going on forums and conversing with people about it, it made it that much better. And then obviously when they announced Shenmue 3, I was, in shock for one. I was excited. I put down all my money on it, and yeah, like it's just it was a big part of my life, and I would even say my identity to a certain extent. So the animation, with the uncertainty of Shenmue 4, just having this as a medium where I can enjoy that world and creation from Yu Suzuki is a blessing. So I'm happy to talk about the series.
Awesome. Well said. Okay, so what did you think of the first episode though? Because that, I mean, you weren't on with us last
I
week.
wasn't here. Yeah, I was sad. I
Right.
wasn't on
Obviously,
there.
we'll be talking about the second episode, but yeah, let's talk real quick about the first episode. What you thought of that?
So one thing that obviously, if people have played the game and then watched the anime, is the pacing is, super fast. And you obviously have to cut a bunch of, things in terms of, exploration and conversations. And they've kind of, I don't know what the right word is, remixed certain things, put scenes that happened later in the game, and put them before, in order for them, to craft a better structure. And I think it actually worked really well. For example, one big example is when Rio meets Nozomi in the park, and she is with the kid, and you have those two bullies. That actually is like a side quest that happens later, and it's also easily missable. But they took that scene before he even goes to the dojo to see Landi and his father, as a way to just kind of help build that relationship between Nozomi and just kind of build that structure. And I think they did a great job with that. And honestly, with the the remixing, so to speak, I think they've done a tremendous job doing it, and I actually don't mind the pacing, because you have to. Yeah, like if you are creating an anime with 14 episodes, you can't dedicate like an entire episode to them just like walking around and drinking, a can of Coca-Cola, or like opening up toy capsules. Like you have a story you have to tell, and the way they've been doing it so far, 2 episodes in, I'm impressed. And we also get different um, background stories on characters that were important, but they haven't gotten as fleshed out, and we can talk about that with this episode. Um, And yeah, I think it's great so far.
What do you think of how they're uh, handling Ryu and Nozomi's relationship? Because that was something that you and I kind of talked about on the Megavision show a few weeks back. Was wondering, we wondered about that. So what do you think so far? That's
Well, I think in terms of emotions, I think Rio has much more emotions in this anime. And one thing I noticed, we were probably going to talk about this later, but in terms of Nozomi's character, I feel like she's much more fleshed out, and like in the game, she's more, I don't want to say fragile, but she's just kind of like, oh, I'm just kind of here, I'll be there when, you need me and whatever. But in here, she's kind of like, taking, an initiative, and she's like helping out, and she's like partnering with him, for example, like find people who speak Chinese and that kind of stuff. That isn't that prevalent in the game. You get some cutscenes like she's she needs saving, or she's, just kind of standing in front of the flower shop and you're saying hello and all that kind of stuff. And you get scenes that kind of show how much she cares. But I think just in terms of her ability to be more capable, I prefer the anime version of her much more than the game so far. I mean, like, it's been 2 episodes in, but they've done a much better job fleshing out that character.
yeah, she's definitely much more, I think, directive with Ryu
I
in
think you
terms of
you
just like
also
kind of
made
getting her
like a
attention.
joke that like he was laughing and like people are freaking out, like, oh god, that's so weird, because he's grinning. And then you had like Willem Dafoe, like this is what Rio looks like, grinning. But yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I think showing more emotion and fleshing out these characters is just like a real treat. And honestly, it kind of makes me want to play the games again because of just like this added background information that I know Yu Suzuki is probably kind of overseeing. Like, oh, let's talk more about this. The relationship with, Iwao and his son, and having all these flashbacks that weren't in the game, is really awesome to see. So it's like as if I'm experiencing the game for the first time from a different perspective, and I think that's awesome.
All right, well, with that said, why don't we just jump into the second episode, right?
Let's do it.
Okay, so episode 2 is titled Daybreak, and we jump in, and it starts with Ryu having a dream, a nightmare. He's basically reliving the moments of Londi murdering his father Iwao in the dojo. And then it shows Ryu holding his now deceased father. He looks up and sees Londi and asks, "Why did you kill my father? He hasn't done anything." And Londi, as he's walking out, he then says, "Then let me ask you, what do you really know about your father? If you choose to pursue this any further, there will only you will only suffer the same fate as your father, basically." And he turns to leave, and Ryu, just enraged, charges after him. Londi turns and just hits him with a palm thrust that it looked like it killed him. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a literal indention of
He needs
Londi's
some
palm.
milk.
like,
Yeah,
like there's,
seriously.
I was like, oh my god, what did he do? He killed him. Uh, and and so then basically that awakens Ryu from his dream, and he sits up in bed and kind of realizes it, and he kind of touches his band-aid as kind of like a reminder, a physical reminder of what happened. And this, I thought we may have asked about this scene uh, in the last episode, because I think this was actually a part of a cutscene in the game, like during that part,
Hmm.
right? This was like taken right out of the game.
He does have a nightmare, and it's more, I mean, quiet. There isn't dialogue. It's just kind of like Landy, just kind of like there's like an ominous music, and it's just kind of him, kind of, in this pitch darkness, and then attacking his father, and then he kind of wakes up. And I think one thing you guys commented on last week with like the bandage thing, that's new. So like before in the game, before he goes in and fights Landy, the bandage is already there. But in the anime, they basically use that as a way of saying this is how he got the bandage. He got attacked by Landy, He starts bleeding, or maybe it was even Chai. I don't remember. But one of those, and that's how he gets the bandage, and then he just keeps it on there. So I think I actually like that. I like that way of kind of showing that iconic thing, because I mean that is like something that is easily identifiable, like a dude in a leather jacket. Sure, you've seen everybody like that, but then you have the bandage. It kind of adds to it.
I do like that they're
Yeah.
fixing some continuity issues like throughout the series, like this in particular. I wondered aloud. I think we were talking in a chat about that, and I was wondering if maybe that was just happened to be on Ryu's character model when they created that that
Oh my
opening scene
God,
there,
it's
because
just
it
kind of
doesn't really
there.
make sense why he would have that to start the game.
Yeah,
You know,
I know there must have been an explanation. I know, like in the game, they like had scenes of like him getting beat up and all that stuff, but like I'm sure there's an answer there, and I'm sure people in the Shenmue dojo are like probably yelling through like the speakers right now. No, it's actually this is why how it happened. But yeah, like you wouldn't have a bandage for that long. Like eventually you take it off, and he just keeps it on the whole time. Like how bad of a cut did you get? Like I don't put a bandage on if I cut my finger while I'm, cooking, and it's there for like 3 years. So, but
maybe
I mean,
he's just like,
it's
I'm not gonna take it off until I show Lon D what he did to me,
yeah,
and then I'll
honestly,
take
that'd
it
be
off.
great. Like if that was the explanation, that'd be great. And then the other thing with Chai being introduced super early on, um, being in the dojo and he fights them, and I think that's important too, to just kind of establish that character, given the amount of space you have telling the story. So I think that was actually great on them to include him early on.
Definitely. Okay, so then we jump to Guilon Village.
Mhm.
We are with Shinhwa, and she's walking with her pet goat. Does that goat have a name, or is
It might, but I don't know. I'll just call him Goat. Her pet goat. I mean, it's good enough.
Goaty McGoatwa?
Yeah. So, she's walking, she greets everybody, she's on the way to see Elder. Yeah. So I don't know if it's necessarily her grandma, but she's like an elder of the village.
In
Um,
the subtitle, I watched the subtitle. It in the subtitle version, it did say Grandma. Yeah, but
mm.
you're maybe that could be just I don't know, a translation type thing.
That's interesting. Yeah. So this is another interesting thing, because this scene and these characters aren't introduced, or these characters, Shenhua was obviously introduced in the first one, but like Elder Ye and that those people are in Shenmue 3. So they're already kind of like weaving in story points from Shenmue 3 into this, and I think the way that they're doing is great. One of the biggest things, I think you can even ask anyone in Shenmue Dojo or whatever, in terms of Shenmue 3's story, is that there wasn't really too much to it, and I feel like I'm hoping that they can kind of retell that story of Shenmue 3 in these scenes that you can see in tandem with Shenfa and Rio, going back and forth. Um, I think would be great, because then it would give me personally a different lens when I'm playing Shenmue 3 again. It just kind of fleshes out and would make it better. So I'm really happy that they're introducing characters that you see in 3. Um, and again, this is another thing that they keep doing, is that they really are trying to nail this poem. Dragon will rise from the earth, conjuring dark clouds to blot out the heavens. And in both episodes they've done it at the beginning and at the end, and they're really making a point, like there's
Mm.
some mystical shit going down. And it kind of, in the games, it kind of loses it as you're playing, so like they're really making a point of it here, which I thought was interesting. um
I always thought that was just
yeah,
a weird poem to kind of begin with, like
like a
it.
metaphor.
Right, yeah, and I get it, but it just seems like it. I don't know, like is Rio really going to be this legendary
I mean, I don't even know.
person
I
that?
don't even know where it's going. Like, is it going to be like Mortal Kombat Annihilation? It's his animality,
Right,
and
I don't
Landy
know.
is like a dragon, or he's a phoenix and Landy's a dragon, and then, or like there's a giant. Is there actually a giant monster that comes out? And it's like Rampage or Godzilla. That'd be interesting.
Well, and
But
that's the kind of the weird thing about it, is because so much of the game is grounded in reality. It's only up until really the very end of, I guess, Shenmue 2, where you see some form of like what you could describe as, I guess, paranormal type things, like something
sure.
that's weird. And so this poem, I guess, it's very obvious that it's talking about Rio here, but
Hmm.
you're right, like they do nail it, home several times. Yeah, so go to the next scene, and we're now. Oh, this is a really cool scene. I got really excited here because Ryu is basically standing in his room. It's basically the scene that you wake up to every day, and he's kind of like
Yeah.
opens up his thing, and
So
you can.
many fucking Easter eggs in these scenes. Like if you
Yes,
you
I
have to
love it.
rewatch it a lot, but like I think this is a scene where you got the boombox, you got a capsule of Tails there. In one of the flashback scenes, there's like he just must love capsule toys because there's like I think there was an Akira, uh, uh, and all and another capsule toy. But yeah, like the Easter eggs are tremendous, and you can there are so many of them if you keep rewatching it, like pointing them out. It's great.
They do a good job of layering that stuff in, because obviously they're not going to spend the time of having Ryu go and venture getting capsule toys and collecting that stuff. So it's kind of
He
cool to
should
see
do it
that.
at least once, just like because you see like the other thing that they do tastefully is the detective work. He asks a question and then you're having like a conversation, but while that's happening, you're also seeing him like talking with other people. They're giving him notes, specifically towards like the Charlie stuff and the tattoo parlor. I think they do a great job doing that. Like they acknowledge that there's a detective part of this game, but they do it in a way where it doesn't feel like it's dragging like for some people, in the game. So
Yeah, for sure.
well done.
Yeah, so Ryu's in his room. He basically he thinks back to a conversation that he had with Ine-san and Fugu-san, which I assume happened maybe the day before. He's basically he's talking to them about the letter. He ends up opening it, and they look at it, and they decided it looks like it's Chinese, like some form of Chinese. And Fuku-san, being the lovable guy he is, always is like, he seems like he's always saying the wrong thing, but he's like, hey, I wonder if that might have something to do with your father's death. Basically, it's just like goad him even more into this, you know, life of vengeance. Why don't you, Fuku-san? So
I think another thing that is interesting, and I've seen like other people make similar comments, is the framework of the revenge portion of the story. So right now, the Rio is more pointing it, is framing it more of he wants to know his father and trying to figure out, is he a killer or isn't he a killer? Like the focal point isn't exactly yet, at least. I want to kill Andy. I want to find this guy. Right now, it's been more of like, is my father a killer? What has he done and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like that is an interesting new wrinkle in the story where it kind of focuses on more getting to know his father and his history. And again, we'll bring this up later. One character that gets a lot of, he gets his own little mini arc is Yamagashi-san, where in the game, this guy broke his back because of the black car that sped down Dobuita. And you get some optional cutscenes with him in the game. But in this anime, in this specific episode, they make a deliberate choice to flesh out that character, make a point that he was Iwao's friend. They make a comment that Iwao wasn't always here. He actually moved here and he was from somewhere else, but they don't really say where he's from. And these different perspectives that you see, it's not just like just Rio and that's it. Like we see, that's another thing I love about this is that they give us perspectives from like, for example, Yamagashi-san being in their dojo, talking with Ine-san and Fuku-san, and just having this conversation about his father and all that kind of stuff. I think that's great, and that's the kind of stuff I want to keep seeing in the episodes coming up.
yeah, for sure. That's really good stuff there. Uh, After that, basically, this is some cool stuff because Ryu is now going into Dobuita, into kind of the shopping district, and he's going around asking people if they can read the letter. Basically, he's trying to find someone who can read Chinese, and you see him going around to a lot of the familiar places that you see in the game, and I love that kind of stuff. And then he ends up running into Nozomi. They have a quick conversation. She's trying to figure out why Ryu is trying to, you know, get someone to read this letter. He doesn't want to tell her. She basically is like, "That's fine. Don't tell me. I'm going to help you anyway."
Yeah,
Kind of to your
exactly.
point earlier.
It's a different take on it. She'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll be here if you need it or whatever." But like she's actively trying to find people who speak and read Chinese. And obviously, you know, they had to get rid of like the whole Three Blades story because I feel like that was also part of this
Oh yeah, yeah. They don't even
disc.
talk about that at all, do they?
You know, he goes like you see a scene with him going into Ajiichi, the Chinese restaurant, but that was the extent of it. It was just like, you know, him looking for people who read and speak Chinese. So that they eliminated that part, and obviously, like
Because
I
wasn't
said,
that
for
also the
time.
part where you're putting the cups too?
No, no, no. That's Shenmue 2. But this is like Three Blades. So you had to go to a barber, you had to go a cook, you had to go to a Chinese or a restaurant or a tailor, and then you spent a decent portion of the first disc trying to, you know, talk to all these different people. So like it was all that, you know, and yeah, they you know shortened it obviously for reasons we
I would
mentioned.
still love to know if there was anyone who actually passed that one QTE in the barbershop the first time around.
You mean the
Because
one where he
when,
puts a blade to his neck?
yeah, I
Yeah,
freaked the hell out. Like I was like, ah, and immediately pressed like all the buttons, and I
I
think
did do that. Yeah,
yeah,
I did
I
that.
did not pass that. That freaked me out. So that was a cool scene. So and then so we'll kind of talk through this next scene. So Ryu's walking home. He visits Yamagishi-san, who they have kind of a cool conversation about Iwao, and he talks about how he knew him a long time ago, and
Hmm.
he basically realizes that Ryu is kind of on a path where he is dead set on finding out what happened about his father.
Right.
You know, he wants to know the true story, and he's basically dead set on it. This is a cool scene where Ryu's still walking home, and he goes into the bar, and like Saijo san is there, and he tells them, if you want to find out where, you know, the sailors are, go to Heartbeats bar. And
They
so
make a
Ryu's
deliberate point not to have Rio say, "Do you know where I can find some sailors?" Like they have the bartender say it, but he was kind of he rephrased it in a way where they knew that there would be an obvious joke. I'm sure people were waiting for that shit to happen, but they didn't do it. But yeah, that was
I
a good
Jamie
scene.
was watching that scene with me, and I was telling her about the whole sailor scene, and it's a weird conversation to have with people that don't know anything about Shinmu really, and you have to tell them like it's a
It's
weird.
just like a sticking point that like I don't even know why they make it. It's such a big deal, but it's like I don't know. It was just I think it was just kind of the times, and then just kind of stuck with it. And then like when people think of Shenmue, that was like one of the funniest things that people would bring up is like, hey, he's asked this 18-year-old kid is going around at night trying to figure out, you know, where some sailors love to hang out in bars, and that's pretty, you know, suggestive question. So I get it, but I feel like there are funnier things. In the
For
game.
sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think they did this part really well. And there was actually a video on Shenmue Dojo where someone tried to line up the scene of him going to the Heartbeats bar in the game and then in the anime. And it's actually pretty damn close. Specifically when he goes into the bar and they ask about the milk thing, he doesn't actually, you know, in the anime they don't throw him a glass of milk, but they make the comment of the milk. But the scene where he's like kicking the other sailors in that bar is almost identical to how the game is, and that just is kind of a testament to, you know, the love that these people who are working on the anime, like the attention to detail for this anime and making it pretty close to and true to the game. And I think that's awesome. And yeah, they did a great job with that. There was one other video that kind of like just put in the QTE buttons and it works really well. I'll send it to you later, but yeah, they did a great job with this.
Yeah, because I put in the notes here of scenes where I thought that there were some QTE segments like in the game. So that was that one of the first ones with the sailors?
So when he's walking down in the alley, that is a QTE with the two guys, the purple shirt and green shirt.
What were their names? I can't remember their names.
I forgot. I would know better. I should know better, but I don't. And yeah, and then in the scene in the bar, that was another QTE with the sailor cap guy. The guy looks like he is from the YMCA or the Village People. He puts his hand on him, and then he kicks him and all that. That was pretty close. So
it's
those
just
two
weird
were
to me that all these guys want to beat up this kid. Like the dudes outside, the sailors, like literally for no reason, are just like, "Hey, kid." He tries to throw a punch. It's like,
I mean, I see those kinds of people on TikTok and World Stars. Like some people just have like their reptilian brain is more prevalent than, knowledge and giving it a minute to think. So I don't doubt those kinds of people exist and those kinds of actions. So
yeah. So Ryu basically it's basically an old West style brawl in the bar that ensues basically over this
shootout, but with fists and punches and kicks
and whirling kicks. Yes, and he basically kicks everyone's butt in the bar, and the bartender's like, "Dude, get out, please." And Ryu's like, "I want to know about Chinese operations." Like, don't go around. Number one, I wish Ryu maybe just watched a couple episodes of like Matlock, or I don't know, just brushed up on a little bit of detective work.
Well, I mean, he's got the biggest balls to just walk around like what, just barely graduating high school, and he's asking about, Chinese mafia. Like,
yeah,
what kind of shit do you want to get into?
Maybe
I
keep a
get
lower
it,
profile, man. Like, just don't he's just
maybe
coming
don't
in with
go
like a
around.
bullhorn.
Yeah. And start kicking
Ruffling.
everyone's ass. Be like, hey, you guys know about, Landi or Chinese operations in the harbor or, that kind of stuff.
Zero tact at all.
I mean, and maybe he knows he's tough shit, and clearly he's shown it, so far. I feel
we'll
like
see where that gets him later on in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a certain degree of like learning and stuff that I feel like they should have maybe injected a little more. I mean, in the game, he does like kick these guys' asses pretty easily. But like the chai scene in the dojo that was in the last episode, it just made it seem like he was like already like just super tough personally. And I felt like that story beat of just him kind of like learning more, like learning from masters and all that kind of stuff gets kind of lost because you have to, edit it down. But
I get it, but I also thought they did a good job showing the stark difference in between the levels of where Landi is compared to Ryu. I mean, Ryu was nowhere near anywhere near he was, and I think it just shows also like that compared to normal people, Ryu is quite a bit better. He can kick pretty much anyone's butt, on the street, and he can handle himself pretty well. But when it comes to fighting a master like Landi, he stands no chance. So I do think he has a ways to go. So
yeah.
Anyway, the bartender finally tells him like Charlie's the dude you want to find, and so this basically sets him on a path. The rest of the episode basically is like looking for Charlie now. And the next scene I thought it was really cool. It starts basically like the next morning, I guess. And Ryu is outside talking to a man outside of the knocking bike store. I don't remember this dude at all working on the motorcycle. Was he in the game?
Oh yeah.
For some reason, I can't remember him.
I remember that vividly. He was actually near the Heartbeats bar. I think, but it's also probably because I do like play it almost annually. So if you play it every year for like 20 years, you kind of are familiar with the layout and the most minuscule characters. But yeah,
that's cool. So it basically jumps from there inside Charlie's hangout, and he's in a warehouse, I guess, just sitting up and chilling with his goons, and they're all kind of laughing about. They heard about Ryu looking for him because, like I said, Ryu was just basically going around and beating down doors, asking everybody.
And they're like,
So
"What'd you do to piss him off?" And they think he's like part of Master Chen's, one of his dudes, in this turf war that they have. And again, like this goes back to my point earlier, where they're like, you have a perspective of Charlie, and you're having this conversation with these guys that you don't normally get in the game, and I think that's great. There was another one. The other perspective that we brought up is Chai. Like, I like that they keep him like kind of like lurking in the background. He has like his own like dialogue and stuff, and I feel like that also just kind of adds to his character than just some shrieking bald fuck from a roof and then he just jumps down and attacks you. Like, I think just that adds to it. So
yeah, he doesn't even get a lot of lines. It's maybe like one or two lines of dialogue, but you still get a better sense of what maybe his motivations are and
yeah,
stuff.
just
So
more
we'll see him kind of
dimensions
come
to
and
it, the
go
character. Yeah.
for sure. And so this next, it all kinds of runs pretty quick. This whole stuff with Charlie is kind of squashed in the next few scenes here, where basically Charlie decides that he wants to find Ryu. The next scene is Ryu walking, and then you see the crying boy run up to him saying,
Yep,
"Hey,
soccer ball.
Mister, they took my soccer ball," and it's basically a way to get Ryu to come and meet them.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens after that? Charlie's still thinking that Ryu. Oh yeah, so Ryu or Charlie still thinks like for this whole time that Ryu is part of the Chen, and like they
Mm-hmm.
never figure out that it's it's not, you know,
It's just some punk
what we
ass
know.
schoolboy.
Yeah. And then so I guess the next few scenes are basically Ryu and Nozomi going through. I think that they go to Game U outside. That was kind of a nice little like far shot outside of the Game U
They made
arcade. And
it much bigger than what it was in the game. Like in the game, it just looked like a small storefront, but in here, it
Mhm.
looks like a Sega Akihabara, arcade. And they in the interior of the arcade, we obviously see like the machines that you see in the first one. You have the QTE title, Space Harrier, and all that stuff, and they have the exact same positioning of the two uh, bikers that are kind of like hunched over a table. But they also kind of expanded it a bit too, because there was also Virtua Fighter, which wasn't in the game, in the first game,
Hmm.
and yeah, and they expanded the space of it, which I thought was nice because maybe they just ran out of memory or space, but like if this is what he actually liked, wanted to see in the arcade, I think that's great. So.
Yeah, I wonder if also that was something that Yu Suzuki wanted to like put in there, like oh put in more, or maybe it was some of the anime. I don't
Yeah,
know.
he's got
I was
like
just
he had
wondering
like
if that
over
was
25 years to think about it, so I'm sure there are things he probably wanted to tweak anyway.
sure. Yeah, for sure. Uh, oh, and so we're gonna get to that scene you were talking about earlier with Ryu in his room again, but
Right.
yeah, so him and Nozomi, they're basically looking around and they're walking back and they get to the flower shop and she's asking Ryu again about what his plans are for university. And so this is another scene
Like, not
again
you,
where
bitch.
where you see kind of Nozomi kind of reaching out and trying to, I guess, maybe extend something further with Ryu,
Like
saying
she's like,
something
maybe
along
I'll
the
apply to the same university you're applying to. He's like, university. That's an interesting thought, and I don't think he really responded to that. I think he just kind of left it an open question.
yeah, and so he's like, huh, and so she's like, okay, well, and then Ryu's walking back home, and that's when we get another memory of him kind of thinking back of a time where he's in his room reading a manga, and that's when his father comes in, and I thought it was interesting because I didn't catch this the first time I saw it, but it was the second time. The book that he gives him is a book that he wrote. He says that he hands him and says this is the kind of book you should be reading. And he says the book contains all the keys to all my important discoveries in martial arts. Uh, and
I
on
don't give
the
a shit, Dad. I want to listen to Shonen Jump and One Piece. Fuck you, I'm out of here. And then he leaves.
that's basically what happens. But on the desk there, as another kind of Easter egg, you do have an Akira and Pi like Virtua Fighter figures
Yeah, I love that
standing
stuff.
on the desk. So that was really cool there. But yeah, I thought it was neat that like Iwa was just like, "You damn kid, read this. This is like true martial arts stuff, and you're reading this dumb manga."
Yeah, I mean he's like what 10 or something like that. Like
Maybe.
yeah, that's the other thing. It's like that kind of scene. It wasn't in the game, and there are flashbacks in the game. You know, there's like the one where he's under the tree. There's one in the residence where he's trying to eat his carrots or whatever, and he's telling him to be grateful for the food that you've been given. But this is a new one. This one is not in the game where he's like reading a shonen uh book, and he's like, man, I just want to do this. And he's like, no, you have to do your martial arts and all this stuff. And then he walks out and says, yeah, I'll get around to it.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so we'll jump a little bit forward. I guess it's maybe the next day. Ryu is back at the arcade, and the sailors come in, and this is just a weird scene right here. I thought, because they're like, "Oh, we want to apologize. We're so sorry for trying to beat you up." And
He's over here behind this curtain.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's like, they're like, "We want to help you. What are you looking for, buddy?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a guy named Charlie." And they're like, "We're his
We
best
know
buddies. Let's take
Charlie.
you." And
What
it's
a
like such an
coincidence.
obvious trap, right? And so
And there's a
Ryu,
scene kind of like it where there's a parking lot next to the arcade in the game, and he meets them there and they beat the shit out of him. But in this one, he's like in a construction site. It's like behind a blue curtain, and then they're all there. They're beating the shit, or they're fighting each other. And like you said, he goes Super Saiyan. He beats the crap out of everyone to get the note back. And then he's like, he's talking about him being part of Master Chen's clan or whatever. Rio doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's trying to find his father's killer, and he's explaining this. And the while this is happening, Yamagishi-san is walking, and then he opens the curtain and sees that he's having a showdown with Charlie. He's like having the knife there, and he's just kind of like watching him. And then Rio explains what he's trying to do, and then he just closes the curtain and then walks away, because he's like, okay, I get it. That I understand what you're trying to do. And then after that, I believe this is a scene where he sees Yamagishi-san in the park holding a cup, and that is a scene in the game. Also, a missable cutscene. This is a cutscene where you learn a move. Um, I'm pretty sure it's called the double blow. Don't kill me, Shenmue Dojo, if I remember that. But this is a scene where, like I said, like the amount of detail that they put in here is great. They could have easily just left this, but this whole scene also adds another wrinkle to the relationship between Yamaguchi-san and Iwao. One thing he mentions is, your father. Not everyone has many faces, and they will not always show you all their faces to you. Kind of, fleshing out that idea of like you might not really know your father. Your father doesn't reveal everything about himself to you. Depending on the person, he'll be like this, and I think that was great. He was saying that they had a drink after they would spar, and he was basically kind of saying like he's having a drink right now for with Iwao, basically.
pouring one
Um,
out.
yeah, pouring one out for my homies. And that same exact cup and label, like that's all how it looked like in the game, and I love all that detail. So yeah, and I think that's where it
Yeah.
ends. Right?
Yeah, it's basically ends with Ryu learning that kind of double palm thrust thing, which I spam all the time, like in the game. I think I
Well,
use
it's
that a
one of the
lot.
easier combos.
Yeah,
On the
and it's just
VMU, it shows you what buttons to input. And yeah, that was also one of my go-to moves. Throw moves I would almost never be able to do. I'm like, fuck this, either tornado kick, double blow,
right.
something easier, punch, punch, kick.
And so as the episode kind of concludes, we hear Shinwa once again reciting the poem, because it seems like that's all she does these days. It's just uh do that poem. And then the kind of camera swipes, and we see another scene where we're inside this like some sort of like really ornate building, it looks like, and it pans up, and when we see these two mysterious figures, and their faces are clouded in shadow, and we don't know who they are, but we know who they are. And so it kind of sets up for the next episode. What did you think overall of this episode, Marcin?
I thought it was great. I mean, like in terms, like I think first watching the first episode and just kind of knowing the pace of the game, playing it and like just knowing it in that form can be a little jarring when you're being introduced to that story in a different medium. But then I get kind of a little used to it. You watch it once or twice and you digest it better. And, you then become more appreciative of all the details and things that they added in that was omitted in the game because a game is different from an anime. There's more interaction and you have to do more things in it. But in this one, obviously, it's storyline focused, and they give highlights to characters that I thought deserved more of a fleshed out background. So they did a great job with it. I think I liked this one better because of all these additional details. Another one like Nozomi, for some reason I thought she lived somewhere else, but she lives above the flower shop. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Seeing her in her house, that's not a thing you see in the game. You call her
I
up.
didn't connect that to her being at the top of the flower shop, though.
Yeah, she was above. Like the scene was like they show the flower shop, and then it just showed. I'm pretty sure that it had a pan up to the top of the building, and then she's in there. And that's one thing we don't see is her room and all that kind of stuff. She has a picture of their friends, of her and all her friends on there. I think that picture actually Rio has in the game. So unless
Oh, that's the
they
one
just
that
have
he can look
copies.
back on as his friends, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's in a frame on her desk. So I mean, obviously people only have copies, so maybe that's what it is. But just kind of those kinds of details are neat. Like you don't have to include that stuff, but they do. So I do like this one better because of all the additional detail. It slowed it down a little bit. It had more of the detective stuff in this one, more of the conversations. I'm interested to see what happens in the next episode. The way he goes about, I'm sure he's going to go to the China shop and get that letter translated. Oh, the other thing that we forgot to mention, they show, I'm pretty sure his name isn't Wang. What is his name? Oh, the guy like would always ask for a drink every time you pass the vending machine. They had a scene with him in this
I didn't even
episode.
catch that. I didn't even
Yeah,
notice that.
and he's like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" And they had like they called it they didn't call it Pepsi, they called it like Repsy or something in the vending machines, just like dumb shit like that. I love like catching. But yeah,
That's great.
looking forward to it.
How would you rate this one? 1 out of 5.
I would give this one 4.5 out of 5. I think overall right now I would also give it about 4.5 out of 5. And again, I'm biased because this game series is near and dear to my heart. So yeah, and Shenmue 3, I mean, you guys can read my review that's on Megavisions. I've had my, you know, quibs and opinions on it. Like I overall enjoyed it because it was a way of him coming back in the game industry, and getting a chance to play the continuation. But like my biggest gripe was with the lack of development with the characters that just kind of seemed tacked on, and that there wasn't a real progression in the game in terms of story. The two regions that you had in in the Guilin region, and then in oh god, the other city, I'll remember it later, was pretty identical in terms of the beats, and I appreciate, in this anime, they are clearly paying attention more to the writing, fleshing out the characters, and I hope they give the Shenmue 3 story a little more depth. And I think that'll help me, look at the game from a different perspective. So,
all right, so I think that's going to end up wrapping up this episode. Thanks for jumping on, Marcin. I'm really excited to see where this series goes from here. Are you gonna, you think you're gonna go back and start playing some Shenmue now? And is it getting you
yeah,
back into your Shenmue mood?
I'm kind of eyeing that PS4 version that's in the background there. Maybe, install it in my PS5 and get some of those achievements I didn't finish, because I feel like I got like 97% of them. So, at least for that incentive, the completionist side of me would want to do it. But just revisiting it and taking these episodes into account. Maybe when this first season is done, I'll do that. But right now we have what, 12 weeks of episodes, so that's there's going to be a lot that we're going to discuss in the upcoming episodes, so I'm really looking forward to it.
For sure. What do you think? Okay, this was the question I was trying to think of earlier.
Sure.
They may end up finishing the large part of Shenmue 1 and 2 in this. I don't know if they've announced kind of where the whole arc of where it's going to contain. So I'm wondering, and what do you think? Like, is the future of the Shenmue story, is that going to be told in anime form versus video game form going forward? Do you think that's a more likely scenario, and how would you personally like to see that play out?
I feel like that was the initial fear, is that Shenmue 3 came out and then they announced the anime. I think it was a year later, maybe it was two. I honestly don't remember if it was 2021 or 2020 when they announced it. But I think the fear was like, okay, Shenmue 3 didn't do that great in sales, so now here's an anime. And then I think the assumption was that that is probably how they're going to finish the story. Um, the nuance there is that that anime was actually still being worked on while Shenmue 3 was being worked on. So it's not like they were like, all right, we're making this anime because we know the sales numbers are going to be shit and we're just doing it this way. So that wasn't the goal in mind. But I feel like, if Shenmue 3 was going to be made, there would have been some kind of teaser or announcement by now, because it came out in 2019 and it's been 3 years. Generally, there would be some kind of rumor, or, with a game like this, you'd be picking up on development, almost immediately, but that is like the uncertainty of, the Shenmue series. So my personal opinion is I'd rather get the story finished than not having it at all. And so far from what I've seen is that I think they're doing a great job telling the story in this format. So if that's how we finish the story, then I will be happy with it. I'll be a little sad because the games are what we all experienced first, and not finishing the story in that medium will be a little disappointing. But I think a lot of people play it for the story too, and if we can get that conclusion, then so be it. So
Right on. All right. Well, thanks again, Marcin. We'll have to have you back on again very, very soon.